Hello and welcome back to Logan Sounds Off. This week on my podcast, I'm going to be reviewing A Walk Across the Rooftops, the debut album from the Blue Nile. The Blue Nile are an incredible group. I know some of their work, a good bit of it, but this is what I know best of their work. This amazing record, and I'm really excited to talk to you guys about it. It's been a big part of my life since I was very small. I know one of the songs in this record, which we'll be getting to soon when we're getting into the tracks, is called Tinseltown in the Rain. And that also always reminds me of going on holidays, because that's a song that we'd always have on our holiday playlist. So Tinseltown in the Rain is a very big track for me, and it's something that I really, really love and grew a lot more when I got to listen to this on vinyl. I didn't actually buy this album. My dad, we were in Rollercoaster Records, the happiest little record shop in the world in Kilkenny. And if you do want to go to Rollercoaster Records or shop off their online shop, all the links to their social media and website will be down below. And my interview with shopkeeper Gary Keogh, the main man himself, the incredible Gary, will be linked down below as well. So my dad saw this, and after coming in back a second time after thinking about what kind of records we were looking at, my dad decided he wanted to pick this album up for the family, which was kind of a nice thing as it's all a really important album to all of us. And just for some kind of brief information about the album, if you don't know about it, this album was released in Castle Sound, Edinburgh. The Blue Nile, this is their debut album, and the musicians who play on this record are Paul Buchanan, Paul Moore, Robert Bell, Callum Malcolm, and Nigel Thomas. This is actually produced by Paul Buchanan and Robert Bell, so it's cool to see that the musicians were also producing this album. It really shows the authenticity behind it, that they were going for their own sound, which I find is really important for me. And the Blue Nile really have achieved an interesting sound on this record, as we'll get into in a sec. So there's some overall information. I know this is from Confetti Records, this particular release. An incredible record this is actually, and well done to Confetti Records for putting this incredible pressing out. It sounds amazing. So as well, for those who are listening on the podcast and are not watching video form, you will not be able to see the album art. So the link will be down below as well for YouTube viewers and anybody on podcasts. You can go down to the description and look at the show notes. They will be linked below on my website so that you can have a look at the album art and read about some of my thoughts there as well, and access some of the links that I'll be referencing throughout this particular review. So with that being said, I just love to get into the album art for a sec. For anybody who knows the Blue Nile, this is really iconic. It's a really beautiful album art, quite minimalistic, apart from this photo of obviously this nearly old building with a phone number on the side, and just lovely colourful letters above, all in kind of rainbow, but slightly off your conventional colours. The next to the yellow looks like a kind of browny yellow, a bit of an off kind of yellow. It's quite interesting, but not in a nearly contrasting way. It's quite nice and it works very well, very minimalistic, with just a walk across the rooftops in capital letters underneath, all neatly in this lovely blue typeset. So it's a really, really lovely album cover. I know I was actually speaking about this to some people about album art and just saying that it's very hard for an album art to exactly represent what's going on in the album. For example, like The Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd, I think that really effectively does that for me. Now, again, my album review of Dark Side of the Moon will be linked below. Another album I know, which I actually am going to be listening to soon, to get to know of because I haven't listened to it much recently, is Loveless by My Bloody Valentine. A man told me before that's exactly how the music sounds. So I thought that was really, really cool. But the Blue Nile really did a good job with A Walk Across the Rooftops with this album art. So I really, really enjoy it. Check it out in the show notes if you're listening on audio. Next, we're going to move on to the tracks. And I'm going to go through the 7 tracks in the record, let you know what's my favourites, what the songs sound like and what kind of sound they achieve as well. But before we get started on that, I would love to ask, I know I've got a lot of people who support my channel dearly and I really do appreciate it, but a lot of my viewers aren't subscribed. So if you're a fan of music, if you're a fan of books, if you'd like to hear interesting interviews with people who I just love listening to, I've interviewed some incredible artists and I've reviewed some incredible albums, reviewed some incredible books on my podcast as well. Make sure to subscribe or follow, whether what service you're on as well. If you are subscribed on YouTube or if you're following me on podcasting platforms, make sure to check out my social media too. I put up a lot of posts about music that I'm listening to, podcasts that I'd like to recommend, what I'm reading currently, as well as interviews that I've had anniversaries of and everything in between. So check out my social media. Links will be down below. Thank you so much, guys, for that quick plug. And again, for those who have subscribed and followed on my services, thank you so much. You really help. So, moving on now from that into the tracks, which is what everybody really wants to hear about. There's some incredible tracks in this album, and I'm excited to get into them, starting off with the title track, A Walk Across the Rooftops, which is just an incredible title. I really, really like the title. So, where I was saying earlier that the Blue Nile really established a sound on this record, there's the kind of Blue Nile sound is slightly minimalistic, but not minimalistic as in it's dense or it's simplistic. It's quite kind of evocative. It's really, really interesting. Not only what they play is interesting, the Blue Nile, obviously the musicians are very talented. Not only what they play is interesting, but what they don't play is interesting as well. There's a lot of room for space for your imagination to run wild throughout these records and really build together different stories, different sounds as well. So yeah, these simplistic instrumentals and really beautiful vocals. And I can't wait to get into the vocals of this record because I actually love them. And it's something that captured me from the start, especially on my favourite track on this album, Tinseltown in the Rain. But Walk Across the Rooftops starts off with these kind of warm drums, especially the snare drum. It sounds kind of warm, a bit thicker nearly, the sound. It's really, really cool, not really flat at all. And these cool little string plucks as well that aren't too distracting. They're just kind of playful. They're in every so often, kind of adding this new texture to the song. Really, really interesting. And although these are nearly an alternative group, not alternative in the sense that they will be alternative rock, but alternative as they're very different. It's kind of strange to have string in your album, but the Blue Nile managed to pull this off incredibly with these really fun kind of string moments on the record that really just add to the song and can really change up the dynamic of a song, whether it's intense or whether it's kind of that playful journey. And I think that's really, really important. And also, I just want to mention, if there's any bassist who is watching and you haven't heard the Blue Nile, maybe have a listen. There's this kind of slappy sound of the bass, not in a strange way like maybe Primus might have, but this weird kind of slap sound to it that just sounds nearly comedic at the start, but once you get used to it, it really plays into the album. So if you are a bassist, listen out for the bass next time. And as well, if you're a fellow record collector like me and you've been listening to the Blue Nile, maybe on compact disc, and you don't have as good a system as your record player, or you've been streaming it, definitely think about buying it on vinyl because the sound is really different. I know I didn't actually hear the bass as much until my dad bought the record and I had to listen to it with him, and we both kind of commented on it immediately. It's such a powerful part of the track. It's hilarious. As well, the kind of soft voice of this song, I really enjoy the singing throughout this song. I know my favorite moment on this entire album is when just the lyric "Yes, I love you" is sang on Tinseltown in the Rain. I would advise, while listening to that song, look out for that lyric. Just the absolute honesty and how interesting it sounds. and this vulnerability that is emitted with this vocal is incredible and really, really interesting as well. It's really, really fun to hear, but it really tugs on your heartstrings, and it really evokes it makes a story for you. It's really, really cool. So definitely listen out to the vocals throughout this album. I think there's a lot that you can pick up on throughout this record regarding vocals. Really, really beautiful singing. So I just wanted to touch on that. As I mentioned earlier, I really love the singing on this album. I love this album in general, but I do want to emphasize on the singing because it's a really special part of the album that I think is super important to the sound of the record, and it really adds another texture that we've already kind of ran through a couple of instruments. We've got our drums, we've got our strings and our bass, and we've got some more to get to on this particular track, A Walk Across the Rooftops. But the voice really brings it together, and it kind of without the voice, you don't really know what emotion you're meant to be feeling listening to this. This is kind of like your map. It's really, really interesting. You know where you're meant to go, and I think that's super important. And then you've also got these kind of subtle swells throughout the album. I'm not really sure, but especially on this song, I'm not really sure what instrument it is, whether it's synth, if it's keyboard, or if it's using just kind of cellos or whatever. I can't recall. I think it's keyboards, but these kind of swells go throughout the song, which is really, really cool, and add this other texture. So now, as you can see, we're kind of pulling together all the links, and then you've got these ambient horns as well in the distance, and I feel like kind of going away from that song for a second, and just in music in general, not even the Blue Nile, I think horns with reverb or delay really, really make it sound majestic or ambient, or it can sound eerie. Horns can really determine how a particular song sounds, and I think especially how they're mixed and how they're produced into the song, how they're integrated in is really, really interesting. So maybe have a listen to the horns in A Walk Across the Rooftops. It's really, really cool. So now we're moving on to my favourite song, Tinseltown in the Rain. So far you've kind of got to walk across the rooftops, and this is getting you into the feeling of the Blue Nile. Obviously, right now there's so much music being put out there, it's hard not to discover a new genre, whereas the Blue Nile are very, very different. So you can imagine what it was like when they first came onto the scene, and keep in mind this is their debut album. They didn't have where they started off making mainstream music like most groups and then transitioned to their creative flow that we all know and love of most groups. The Blue Nile just got into it amazingly at once, which was really, really interesting to me. And first of all, in Tinseltown in the Rain, the one thing that stands out to me is the piano. I really, really enjoyed the piano on this song. These kind of just playful chords every so often. The kind of strum to them as well. The slight strum is really, really interesting. As well as this upbeat bass. The bass lines on this record are generally quite good, so I would expect that on Tinseltown in the Rain. Then you have the chords, obviously, just the occasional, as we were mentioning there, those chords really pair well with these lovely strings throughout this song, are amazing. And where I was mentioning earlier about synth, I think the Blue Nile do very well with their synth and can kind of establish a really cool texture with their synth. So they really did that on Tinseltown in the Rain. And then you got these progressive plucks throughout it of these kind of string plucks as well, and amazing lyrics. The lyricism on Tinseltown in the Rain is beautiful. I know I mentioned that one moment where it's yes, I love you. I love that part of the song. Have a listen to this, especially with headphones. If you have a good set of headphones, do not waste them. Use the Blue Nile to your advantage and have a listen, because they have this beautiful sound when you've got a proper system with you. And then you got the song From Rags to Riches. Now, I will keep in mind, for those who don't really know about the Blue Nile, you may not know they have longer songs. I'm not talking Pink Floyd long, where you might have a 20-minute suite of tracks, but this is 7 songs on it. Now, it's around nearly 40 minutes, 36 to 40 minutes. It's quite an average length album, but the songs are long individually. So this is the last song of Side B. It goes fast. And I love the cowbell on this particular song. I think it's really cool. Now, thinking back to this particular song, I can't recall whether it could be synthesized or it could be a natural cowbell, but I do love the cowbell anyways throughout this song. Also, the percussion. I know, for those who don't know, I actually make music myself, and casually. I am in no way like a brilliant musician like these guys. I just make very basic songs for enjoyment, play around with things. And I remember when I discovered phasing of instruments, it was a big deal for me, going, wow, you can do this with instruments. And now it's always kind of, I've always been in awe of that particular sound, but it gets tiresome after a while. I know with 80s it's used a lot, but on this particular song, with 80s music, that is, apologies, the percussion has this phaser on it, and it sounds really, really awesome, and I really, really like that. So maybe have a listen to the percussion next time you're listening to this album. Really, really awesome. Then as well, you've got this really vast bass drum. Again, the Blue Nile, if you know them, they use a lot of kind of reverb, delay. They use that ambient sound, that vast, deep, beautiful sound that can be utilized to make the most beautiful music ever, or the most terrifying music you've ever heard in your life. And they use it to make the most beautiful music ever. And you got this vast bass drum as well. And again, these low volume synth melodies, these really cool synth melodies as well. And also, where you've got this vast bass drum, you've also got the snare edge, that also has this really vast kind of sound to it as well, which is really, really awesome. The drums in general, along with the percussion, have this really vast kind of, at times, phasers, where we're talking about the percussion. So From Rags to Riches is this really, really cool song. It finishes up side B nicely. It feels like the side goes by quite quickly, actually, with only the 3 songs, but it is quite an emotional journey. So From Rags to Riches is a very, very good track, and I really, really like it. So then we've got the song, and this is starting off now, side B. And now that we're moving on to side B, the expectations are high. But I don't think I should really use my expectations on side B, because the album does change. It's not very similar. I don't think you can compare the 2 sides, although saying that it's not like completely different, that there's 2 different albums or that there's 2 different concepts or anything. But it does change up a bit. So you've got the song Stay. So we're now at the 4th track of the album, just for those who might want to keep track of where we are on the record. And this is kind of upbeat. This is your more mainstream oriented. I'm not saying this was on purpose. I just think this will more appeal to a broader audience, although I think the Blue Nile appeals to a lot of people. And then you've got these cool chimes as well. I love chimes. I find them really just beautiful to listen to, not only in that kind of 10-hour Spotify playlist that you find of just rain chimes, but chimes in music are awesome. I really, really like them. They can add a really cool touch. These awesome chords as well in Stay are really, really cool. Really, really fun. And you've, again, this amazing synth, really, really good. Where we were mentioning phasing percussions last time. We don't have those phasers again. But, and I'm not saying that in, well, look, we don't have the phaser. I'm just saying we don't. But they are really class. They are really cool, fun percussion. And again, great vocals. Where we were talking about vulnerability on Tinseltown in the Rain and A Walk Across the Rooftops. In Stay, during the chorus, there's a lot of vulnerability in the voice. It's really, really amazing. Really has a beautiful sound. So listen to Stay and listen to the chorus as well. Listen out to the chorus. It's really, really cool. If you don't know the Blue Nile, I would recommend this as the one track to get you into it, or Tinseltown in the Rain. I would probably say those 2 tracks. Or Heatwave, which we'll get to in a sec. And I know I'm picking half the album, but they are really good tracks, and I think that's what would really get you into it. I know Tinseltown in the Rain got me into the Blue Nile, but so that one definitely works. Then you have Easter Parade, and this is kind of weird for me, this song, not in a bad way, because only recently I kind of heard this in the context of the album Easter Parade. And it sounds really awesome, Easter Parade. It's a really, really cool track, but it's very, very different. It sounds much stranger, but it's very, very good. It's got these warm keys, which I love. That kind of warm sound is throughout a lot of the Blue Nile. these really, really cool warm textures. It's like a hug. It's a musical hug, which you don't get a lot. You don't get a lot of musical hugs, but this one it's a good hug. But then you have this kind of, what I have wrote down here is ambient and distant. It sounds really ambient and very distant. It doesn't feel like you're there, you're watching this Easter parade. It's very, very interesting. And it sounds like where you're kind of in songs like Tinseltown and the Rain Stay, you're really involved in the song. This feels like you're more of a viewer. You're not here as part of the song. You're listening. Whereas others, you're in the song. You're meant to feel it. Whereas this is you're meant to watch other people feel it. Nearly, you're meant to view it, not be it. I know that's kind of a strange concept, but that's what it feels like. It feels distant to you. Not in a bad way. I love this switch up of the vibe. It's really, really interesting. It definitely throws you off. I know, I'm pretty open to music, but the Blue Nile was really interesting to me. Not in a way where I was going the first time, oh, this is rubbish. Immediately, once I heard it, I was like, wow, this is really beautiful. But it still took me a long time to understand it. Because I know most of the time, if I don't like something, it just means I don't understand it yet. So I might need to give it a couple more listens, maybe understand the concept that was going on, what part of the person's life it was. But the Blue Nile was immediately came to me as just one of my favourite bands. So yeah, I just find that very, very interesting. And just moving on from the track list just for a sec, I will get back to the final two tracks because they're pretty crucial. You're finishing up the record. These really matter most, these tracks. But we're just going to park that for a sec. And I'd love to just say that the Blue Nile, the thing about the Blue Nile is looking at them from just a straightforward sense. Literally, they don't really come across as something that it would appeal to everyone. Yet it does. It clicks the first time, but it clicks that you like it, but you don't understand the full context until the Blue Nile makes you get involved. You need to listen to it more. It won't just give you the feelings for free. You've really got to understand the album. You got to get in depth with it. So I think that's a really, really interesting point. Now that I've finished that, we're going to bring back the track list. We're coming back now to Heatwave, which, as I mentioned, is one of the more approachable songs in the album and one that I would strongly recommend. And I'm excited to talk about this. This is such a beautiful song. This feels like sunset on the beach, having kind of not fun exactly like the Beach Boys, because it's not the Beach Boys, obviously. It's not that kind of fun. It's more just relaxing. You've got these kind of cool guitars twanging nearly in it. Not twanging in a country sense, but just really plucking nearly. Not too aggressive, just kind of fun with it. It rolls with it very, very well. So listen out for that, the guitar during the chorus. It's really, really cool. Obviously, if you're a long-time viewer or just you're looking out, you can see I'm a guitar player, so I listen out to the guitars. And that's just really cool. And I like the guitars in this particular song. I thought they were really, really cool. And then you got the great percussion. Amazing, amazing percussion on this song. Really, really cool. Amazing vocals. And this class bass again. The class bass on this song. Really, really cool. I really, really love it. And have to say, Heatwave is an important song on the record. But we have one more song to go. Automobile Noise. This is a strange track, but it's really, really ambient, kind of gentle. It's a way of saying goodbye. It's not in a sad way, but it's going, we're finished the album now. We hope you enjoyed. This is our closing track. It feels like a closing track, and it's slowly just exiting. It's really, really nice, really, really ambient and lovely and just beautiful. So that's the tracks on the album. So we've got through a lot. If you're still watching, thank you so much. You must be a dedicated fan to either me or the Blue Nile. I would hope it's both. I would hope. But moving on then from the tracks, my overall thoughts. This is a really beautiful album. It captures something that another art form can't. Only music can really get this, but I feel like the band did such a good job in capturing these feelings. The production on this album is incredible. It's very authentic sounding. It's a perfect album, and it's what I look for in an album. It sounds amazing on a turntable, and it made me feel something. It made me feel sad. It made me feel happy. It made me feel empathetic. It was really, really beautiful like that. So overall, for that reason, I'm going to give it a solid 5 stars. I was going to do that, but I thought that would come across as 10. No, I'm going 5 stars. All 5 of them I'm giving to this album. It's amazing. If you want to stream the Blue Nile, all links down below in the description. I've done them already for you. If you want to buy any vinyl or anything off Rollercoaster Records, check it out. It's an amazing record shop. I love it. If you want to check out Confetti Records, links down below. And I would hope you'd want to check out more of Logan Sounds Off. So links will be down below for that. So please, if you liked this video, please like it if you're on YouTube. If you're on YouTube or Spotify and you have any thoughts or you like the Blue Nile, share your favourite moment on this record down below in the comments. Please share this episode as well as this. Subscribe on YouTube and follow me on my podcasting platforms, whichever one you use, and social media. And make sure to turn on notifications as well so that you never miss a new episode of Logan Sounds Off. Thank you so much for watching my review, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Goodbye.